Very good. Welcome everybody here to August 8th. I mean, it's August already. I mean, we talk about the year hurtling forward here, and and indeed we're moving incredibly fast here. So we've got a lot to talk about today, and we will recap the garden tour, right, and celebrate that. And we definitely can indeed celebrate, what a great experience for the attendees, and for ourselves in terms of the financial resilience that it helps with us here. Lots of announcements to get through as we get through the summer calendar here, and then Eva is here with us today to talk to us about how to take a picture. And this program was specifically requested by Tony Gwynn, noting that Tony says we take terrible pictures, and this is something that we need to be good at, not only in taking other people pictures, but also taking pictures of plants, diseased plants, and so forth that we need to identify or diagnose. So it's incredibly important that we become good at taking pictures and figuring out all this. So I'm very much looking forward to Eva's presentation here. So the calendar in terms of the busy August. I mean, you often think of August as a sleepy month, but certainly not for the birthdays and for the activities that we've got going on here. So happy birthday to you, Robin, who's online with us here, of course, to myself coming up, Wendy, Connie, Bridget, Renee, Rachel, and Jessica. And of course, both county fairs. And this was an early fair for the Grays Harbor County Fair. This is like a week earlier, right? When they usually happen. So any quick comments, Val, or anybody from Grays Harbor that want to talk about how that fair went and the number of people and so forth, the particulars?
I was there Friday morning when it was raining, so my group wasn't very large, but was able to have some long conversations with about three gardeners, so that was awesome. And somebody asked me from Virginia, mind you, asked me how I built my raised beds, so my day was made. But the day before, we give we stick everybody this year. We gave stickers of butterflies to count them, and the day before, a couple of the docents did 21 strips, and I think there are 8 or 9 butterflies on a strip. So there were quite a few people there.
Any sense of the count?
I have no idea. Cindy probably has that by now, but I am not privy to that right now. So,
His,
and she hasn't announced it.
Historically, it's been in the thousands, right? And so that is it's just
Yeah.
staggering, right, to think about that many people coming. So again, this is why that garden is so incredibly important to us as a foundation, because it is our front door, really, our front retail office for so many of us here. So
Exactly. And people made their way right up to during the rain up to the gazebo and sat down, and we had comfortable chairs and benches up there. So, and we have such an awesome community. They really appreciate what we do in the garden.
And
And
I've got your slide set on the gazebo later in the presentation, so I'll
oh,
ask
good.
you then to talk through that, right, when we
Oh,
get to
okay.
that section. Anyway, congratulations on that fair, and we're looking forward to the Pacific County Fair coming at the very end of the month. In fact, Mike and I are going out. Mike Carvey and I will be going out later this week. Actually, we're trying to we have to rebuild a room so that we can use for it for plant clinic and stuff out there. So that we've been putting on our coveralls and making things happen. Okay, so the garden tour, as we've been mentioning, was a huge success. I mean, almost 400 people, right? Was coming through this, and I think that's, Terry, you're online. Is that a record for us? The number of tickets sold, the number of visitors?
Actually, it's not, but it's up from the past few years. The highest number of tickets that I'm aware of was the Ocean Shores tour in 2019, the last one before COVID, and that was 475. And the year before that was South Beach, which was almost as close with about 450.
Wow. So I guess when I think about South Beach and you think about Ocean Shores, a more concentrated area, I suppose, right? When you start thinking about, Elma and McCleary, you had to drive a little bit, right? So
Right. and people don't mind driving to the beach.
Sharon, you're online. Is it? I put up the preliminary numbers you shared, but are there any refined numbers that that we should know about?
I think there's still some bills out there to be paid, but probably, Terry can correct me on this, probably not more than maybe a couple $100.
That's right. Just a couple of media bills are still outstanding.
Right. And I think you also have some more, there's some more income from tickets that isn't in here yet too, maybe another $100 or so.
Oh, okay. That last deposit I made was, it was about a 165, I think is
Okay.
what it was.
So
Well,
those aren't part of the preliminary numbers.
It's
Right.
really exciting for me to note that, you know, is that this, of course, in absolute dollar terms, is not as great as the home and garden show, but the gross margin, the profitability of this effort, right, you know, is huge, right, you know, because obviously all the donated labor going into the gardens. So this is it's a very profitable, you know, program for it, you know, from our standpoint. So Terry, I've got a couple slides here in terms of tour feedback, and I was impressed by the survey results here. You know, I was noting that, you know, you had, you know, so many people were impressed, you know, the takeaways that they took away from this.
Yes, the educational component really seems to not go unnoticed by the people that are on the tour, which is wonderful. I mean, that's our mission, is to you know, help people not just appreciate beautiful gardens, but also learn something.
And so I just, you know, as you start thinking about everything that's on that list here, these priority lists, you can almost just click off the priorities from our WSU extension program, right? And say that, you know, hey, we hit on each one of these, right?
Right.
And in a fairly subtle ways, isn't it? It's not like we were preaching or pounding them over the head with these messages, right? I think just the experience of seeing the gardens and learning how these, you know, learning how the gardens were maintained.
Yeah, how to apply the garden practices that we preach about. And, you know, I thought it was really, really interesting how many people commented on learning something about rain gardens, which, granted, that was a bit of an experiment to see how people would relate to a brand new garden, but it really seemed to have a great impact on what people took away from this tour.
So Val, do you
So
want to
thank you,
underscore?
Val.
Yeah, you want to underscore that, Val? That was a huge effort on your part.
It sent Val to the orthopedic doctor right after the tour.
Indeed. It was a grand day from beginning to end, and I owe a lot to Lori and all of my docents. I think Barb is here and Erin is here and Heidi Davis and Debbie Knight and Sally Hall, and everybody was excited with me. And I'm pretty sure I talked to almost all of the 324 people that came in. And some of you weren't there. I have a very narrow pathway along between the house and the rain garden, and it was constantly full of ingress and egress. And I kept hitting the points. I'm creating a biodiverse ecosystem here, and people really appreciated that and talked about the importance of the compost and the mulch and how the native plants are much more adaptive than non-natives. And that's what I'm counting on, because my water bill is probably going to be, I'll have to take a bank loan this bi-monthly period to pay. But it was awesome, and I really, really, like my master gardener friend in Kitsap says, I bet you were tickled pink, and I truly am, and I'm really humbled by how people really appreciated it. So it was, all the pain and effort was worth it. So thank you for the opportunity, Terry.
Hey, I was just so impressed by how you put it together and all the different phases that you went through. I mean, I don't know anybody else that would sift the soil like you did.
You don't know my parents.
Well, that's a good point, Val, because we saw some of the before pictures, right? You know, and so we know the progress that you made, right? You know, in just a matter of weeks, right, going on there.
Well,
so
yeah.
congratulations.
Thank
I
you.
want to add too that a lot of the people that came through, I bet most of the people of those 324 had the comment as they were leaving that they'd like to see it again. They want to
Exactly.
tour again in a year or 2 or 5 years, or whatever,
Good
and see
idea.
the progress.
We'll talk about that at the GGH meeting, Terry, because Cassie has some good input.
Okay.
I was impressed by, I highlighted a couple of the other comments, Terry, right? You know, that were on the comment charge here. And I was,
Right.
the things that took me away, some of the hardscape comments, right? You know, the use of containers, the use of the rock walls and things. I mean, I found that impressive, that people are realizing, you know, that can play a key part in terms of how your landscape can look, right? You know, it's not just pretty flowers or smelly, you know, smelly fragrance. You know, there's a lot to do in the hardscape.
And there was a lot of the comments mentioned what they about native plants, which I also thought was cool. That they appreciated seeing and learning more about native plants, which were in all the gardens. So that was wonderful.
Well, a great success, you know, and again, Bev, what's the blog that that they write about here, that she's followed all the gardens and has all the pictures and so forth?
Tangley Cottage.
Yeah. So if you want to put that in the chat, you know, Terry, or something like that, I think people should check that out, you know.
Are you talking about Skylar Walker?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and Bev, you want to put that in the chat too. So Skylar Walker is a resident here in Pacific County who routinely comes to all the plant tours and is very impressed, right? You know, she makes the trek up to Grays Harbor specifically, right, to do this tour, and then writes about it and takes pictures.
She features each garden individually over the course of, well, in this case, it would have been 6 days. She covered each garden separately, which is often what she does for our tours. So they're really fun to look through, because she and her husband are really good photographers, for one thing, and she really captures the spirit of each garden. So yes, it's a really good blog. It's called Tangley Cottage.
And Bev will find it and put it in the chat there. Again, congratulations on so much, you know, in terms of it, in terms of what this was doing. So Terry, is there a highlight already for next year? You have your sights set, you know, on a new location. How are we going to make the garden all, is it going to be all Val all the time type of thing? Is Val going to have to buy more property and expand?
Yeah. Well, we have some options in the works. So the tour always kind of hinges upon finding a couple of key gardens in the beginning, as kind of giving us an area to concentrate on. So that's what we're looking at right now. We're looking for those key gardens that will allow us to build around, you know, the 2 or 3 wonderful things we find in the beginning, and then we build around that.
Rhonda, you want to share?
I just want to make a quick comment. I don't know. We all put in a lot of volunteer hours and time doing such a vast number of different things. I just want to recognize that during the heart of all of our gardening efforts, when we all kind of start in March, whether it be in our greenhouses or in our windowsills, but March through July, when all of us are reaping the benefits of the hard work we've put in the spring in our yards, our gardens, the flowers we've planted, the things we all do that we love, Terry's focusing on a home and garden show and a garden tour. And I don't know how she maintains her massive garden that she has and puts in all the hours and the time that she does to organize these 2 huge fundraisers for our organization. There are not enough words of gratitude to recognize, Terry, all that you give up in the spring in order to benefit our organization. And I can't applaud you enough. And I think you deserve some recognition for this distraction, I'll call it, when the rest of us are gardening. You're doing all this hard work, and it's appreciated and recognized.
I
Well,
second that.
You're making me
second that.
blush.
A
I-
blush
I
over
think-
Zoom. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the reason why I like doing it is because I get to work with all of you, and I get to actually interact with our members in person. And so those two things are in-person activities that survived COVID. And I just really like working with all of our master gardeners, and you and Robin make it very, very easy to do this big, huge project, Rhonda. So thank you.
It
And
is a
Kelly.
it is a reminder that
It's kind of a foursome.
well, no, it's a reminder that there's a, it takes a village, right? To pull all this thing
Yes.
together, but it takes, echoing Rhonda, it takes a leader, right? To lead the village, right?
Yes.
So Terry, thank you. It's a huge win, right? For so many people, not just us as master gardeners, but you think about all the lives we touch, the education that has been served, right? As a consequence, not just of the tour, but of the home and garden show. So it's a big deal what we do. It's important what we do. And I think that's, this isn't just a casual garden club, that enjoys getting together and chit chat, right? I mean, there's some real purpose in terms of in terms of what our output is. Okay. And with that, let's just quickly jump into our August to-dos. It's interesting now, it's the time for us already to be thinking about fall and thinking about winter planning. And as Aaron and I were chatting earlier, this is the time at which pests often come out and are particularly annoying. In fact, Aaron, do you want to raise the issue for now that we have a full complement of master gardeners online here? If you want to share your challenge for Jude's online here as well, how can we help?
Okay, I have a Meyer lemon that has scale, and I've been trying to control it manually, but I'm kind of getting tired of squashing bugs by hand. And the only other controls I can find are for industrial citrus. So if anybody has any resources or ideas.
So scale on a Meyer lemon, feed those ideas and concepts to Aaron, and you'll win a gold prize, maybe even a trip to Rochester to fetch a Meyer lemon or two off of her tree.
Yeah, Kelly.
Go ahead, Jude.
Marshall's Garden Center in Aberdeen does sell a systemic, if you're willing to use pesticide, that seems to work pretty well. Carol Burrich, if you remember her, she had that as a perpetual problem in her greenhouse. So you might want to give that a try. I don't remember its name.
So Carol used a systemic, pesticide from Marshall's on her Meyer lemon with great success.
Yes.
There you go.
Okay.
You'll have to come in from the far reaches of Rochester into the big city, Aaron, that's for sure. Okay. So August 2 is best time to water, early morning. I think the forecast is for some rain tomorrow, and we're incredibly, thrilled that we're actually getting these hundredths of an inch of rain because it has been so dry all of these times here. So note that I've often struck by this comment about camellias, how it's important to deep water camellias now so that they'll develop their buds for next spring. And of course, anybody, you've done any driving around, right? And you can see how the lawns are incredibly dry at this point, right? So there's this tremendous amount of stress on this thing, but the deep watering is what we are told to recommend here. Another comment about clippings and composting, right? If you're using these heavy duty fertilizers, the weed and feeds, don't compost those, and diseased plants, keep those out of the compost unless you're confident that your compost is indeed toasty in temperature. Fertilizing, pruning out dead fruiting canes and blackberries, pruning the raspberries. So it's just, it's something that, Cass Turnbull always said is that, we can be pruning all through the year here, in the Northwest. And there's just always something to be done relative to cleaning things out. Interesting about the comment about cherry trees too, right? Is it getting those fruit trees pruned now before the rains? So to allow the pruning wounds to heal somewhat. So lots of things to be done with respect to it, to pruning and attention to the garden. And then, of course, just winter cover crops, right? You know, it's the time to be thinking about what to be planting now. And of course, that's just, you know, you've got the soil is up to a great temperature, so you'll have good germination on whatever seeds you want to put out. You know, it's not now is the time to be thinking about, okay, what do you want to be harvesting come fall? And it, or as you know, the comment of midsummer plantings, right? You know, is it your second planting or third plantings, if you will? You know, those of you who have heat units, you know, of course, those of us on the coast, you know, we're unfamiliar with that concept, but but we do appreciate the fact that those of you inland, right, you know, you can grow things, right? You know, so we hear about this thing theoretically. Pest monitoring, you know, this is that, again, just as we were just talking about, is that chemical controls as a last resort, but indeed they are a strategy for pest controls that we are known as WSU Master Gardeners, right, to make aware of and to take advantage of. It is interesting, of course, about how many people come to us at clinics, right? And the first thing they're asking, you know, what can I spray, right? What can I, you know, what's the quick immediate solution, right, that I can apply, and the education that has to go on in terms of how do we deal with these some of these other issues here. So again, it's a big thought. Any other comments regarding August to-dos? Any other habits or chores or activities in your gardens that we want to share for everyone? It's a great time to be able to reap the harvest, you know, of our gardens, but it's also the time to be paying attention to things. Okay, so I want to bring on a comment about elections coming up here. So your board, right, your 2023 board, and this is for the foundation. So again, as we've always talked about, the Master Gardener program is the program that we certify ourselves against, that we do our education against, that we spend all of our time, you know, we spend all of our time, you know, working against the program. But the foundation host programs like the garden tour, right, in order to raise money to support our program activities. And so this is your 2023 elected board, you know, and you have, of course, you know, not in addition to the foundation-wide officers, you have 3 officers on the board that are selected by the 3 geographic subgroups in Pacific County, in Greater Grays Harbor, and in Coastal Grays Harbor. And of course, then Alina and Brenda represent ourselves as coordinators with Tony as our faculty liaison. I'll mention again, right, is that in order for us to have a program, in order for us to have a Master Gardener program per WSU, we've got to have a faculty liaison, and we've got to have coordinators. And so we are one, as Tony has mentioned, we are one of only 2 counties in the state that entirely support our coordinators without any support from WSU Extension. And Tony, from her part, she gets no credit for WSU for being our faculty liaison. This is not part of her job description. So again, we as a 2-county foundation here in Southwest Washington are going above and beyond, right, in terms of supporting ourselves as Master Gardeners. That leads me then to our October election of officers for 2024. So reminder for everyone here is that, you know, per our bylaws, in October of each year, we select, right, you know, our president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, and directors, right, you know. It strikes me, Sharon Coolish Bales, I'll reach this out, strikes me that our bylaws, I think, still talk about, I'd still talk about directors that are no longer part of the elected board. Didn't we eliminate the education representative, you know, and this is, you know, the education program, I think some time ago. I think we probably need to be thinking about an edit to the bylaws, right, to clean up this text.
I thought we had already done that, but if we haven't, yes, we need to do that with our next update, which will probably be next year.
Yeah. And so, you know, Elizabeth, I know you're on. Do you want to have any comment? I know this is you've been working to prepare the slate of candidates and nominees for all the positions. And again, I want to emphasize that regardless of the slate that is presented for balloting, anyone can vote and anyone can have, you know, these positions. I will note that the coastal Grays Harbor, Greater Grays Harbor, and Pacific County, those roles, those director slots will be filled by separate votes from representatives from master gardeners from those communities.
Yeah, Kelly, we have a nominating committee. It is composed of at least one member of every class, starting with, well, we didn't get a 2022 person, but if there is someone out there in the audience who would like to join us from the 2022 class, please let me know. But we have everyone. Terry is representing the 10 master gardeners who are still with us from classes prior to 2008 and earlier. And any comment I might make about those old, that class being old, it is not an ageist comment. It is, thank you for pointing that out to me, Terry. It is a recognition that these are folks who have been with us for a very, very long time. And I thought I was being kind to let them off the hook of being part of the nominating committee. But Terry bravely stepped forward and said she would represent that group. So yes, we have, and they are represent every single area of our 2 counties. So that we have people from the peninsula, from the North Pacific County, from the coastal Grays Harbor and the central Grays Harbor areas on our nominating committee. We have almost a complete slate at this point. However, we are always looking for people who would like to be on the slate that we haven't approached. So if you would like to be we do not have, by the way, a president-elect for next year. So that is going to be an open position and we are searching for someone to fill it. But there will be a slate by the time we come back together in September.
So again, there's the shout out to everybody here, for consideration of these roles. There are job descriptions for all of these roles, mind you. So it's not just there's not just a throwing into the deep end of the pool and
Nope.
splashing about. I mean, there actually are prescribed functions and duties, right, for each of these roles. And I'd like to feel that they're all doable and that no duties assigned to the roles are, require superhuman abilities here.
Well, and the other thing, Kelly, is that all job descriptions are available for folks to read on our website. And we very well know from Terry's example and Margie's former example, when she was the program support person, that we can always call in people to help us. Mm-hmm. Master gardeners are incredibly generous with their time and their efforts. And people have always stepped up to say, I can help with that. Give me a task, I will help you with it. So yeah, I think it's all very doable. It keeps our program running really well.
And to underscore that, right, is that the program needs these functions, right? These functions
Absolutely.
as the foundation are necessary in order to keep this corporation moving forward.
Right.
And so this bit of structure, this bit of administrivia, right, is a necessary infrastructure to help going forward. So we encourage everyone to step forward. Okay. So Elizabeth, will be looking for more feedback from you as we get into September, and then as we reach out to October. Okay, so that a reminder then for everybody is that what we're doing this year, right, as an experiment here, is to make sure that we're having an opportunity for both weekday and weekend meetings, as well as trying to mix up when we can get together face to face. So at the first 2 months of each quarter, right, we're doing Zoom meetings such as we're doing today. The third month of the quarter will be a Saturday Zoom. And indeed, one of the things we'll be talking about actually for September is that do we actually want to come together for a face-to-face? And we'll be talking about that at our board meeting tonight, by the way. So and I'll make another comment about that. But I'm trying to keep the URL for the Zooms, right, the same all the time. And the same numbers and the same passcodes and so forth for each meeting. So at these foundation meetings will always be at 10 a.m. regardless of whether they're the Tuesdays or the Saturdays. The board meetings are always on the second Tuesday at 6 p.m. And that allows folks that are otherwise unable to attend during the day to participate at this 6 p.m. time. And those meetings are always then on the second Tuesday. They're always at 6 p.m. And and the passcode, as is published in e-news, and the Zoom URL is here. So as I mentioned, as I hinted at a little earlier, one of the topics we'll be talking at tonight's board meeting is to where and how to hold our September meeting, which will be on a Saturday. And historically, we've always had a picnic, and historically that picnic's always been at Terry's, and so one option we're going to be considering is whether we want to hold that picnic at the demo garden under the new gazebo, which we're going to be talking about here in a few minutes. So again, if anybody has thoughts regarding September meeting, where we'd like to have a meeting, and what we'd like to do at that meeting, please join us tonight at 6 p.m. or send a note, ahead of time for your consideration. Okay. So continual reminder here to keep recording hours. So everybody who participated in the garden tour, right, secured a lot of hours, a lot of volunteer hours. And so Brenda and Alina, I would hope that you'd be able to report that everybody's gone on to Give Pulse and have added all those hours, right, in. So everybody should be up to date with their hours, given the fact that they've had 3 weeks, right, to do this.
I just want you to know that I recorded and verified all the hours on Give Pulse yesterday, and there were about 130 impacts that I recorded.
Most outstanding. Those are separate. So those are not impact separate hours. Those are just separate impacts. Each impact could be multiple hours, right?
Yeah.
So again,
So
if there's
a lot of hours that were posted yesterday.
So any questions in terms of how to run Give Pulse, you know who to ping, right? Alina and Brenda, right? And they'll help you work through all this.
Right.
Alina, Brenda, any other announcements from a coordinator standpoint?
When do you, not really, we put an article or posted something in the e-news about collecting data for gender, ethnicity, and race. And I'll be talking to you more, Kelly, about that. Jennifer really wants us to start doing that more consistently because she has to make a report to WSU and they will then report to the Civil Rights Commission on how we're doing.
Okay. And
as a federally funded entity, we do have to report that information.
So I know this is awkward for many of us, right? Because the idea of having to identify our clients by gender and by ethnicity seems.
We don't do that. We just give them a slip of paper and they identify themselves.
So it's a self-reporting and it's an opt-in capability, right?
That's correct.
Yeah. But the point I was going to make there is that because we are federally funded, is that the WSU extension is federally funded. This is a requirement from the United States government that, that this kind of reporting this kind of data is collected on a voluntary basis, as you know.
Correct. And it's also anonymous. So they put it in a container after they fill it out. Yeah. We never touch it. Except for me, when I total all the information in an aggregate form and send it to Jennifer.
There you go. But you do it with a blindfold on, so you're just,
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. Hey, other announcements. This is an announcement time. I want to make sure that we have opportunity to share.
Is this a good time for me to update on training?
Please.
Okay. So our training committee's been meeting since the fall of 2022, and we are making changes that addresses the long distances that many people have to travel for classes, and I think we mentioned that in the past. Some of the changes include having class instruction in 4 locations, depending on where participants live, and we'll find out where those locations will be once we get the applications. Another change is classes will meet monthly, once a month on Saturdays. And they start in January 20th and they go until October. And then graduation and getting their certificates and their badges and all will happen at the celebration and recognition event in Aberdeen in November, okay? Everything else is pretty much the same. It will include Zoom. It will include the same topic being covered by people at each one of the 4 locations, hands-on. And we're going to have guest speakers from WSU and OSU and other organizations. Just wanted to let you know, we have 40 people on the waiting list. And one of the things I did this year is when I got their name, I contacted them individually and told them a little bit about the program, offered to have Master Gardeners contact them to answer questions or to talk more about how we serve our communities in gardening, because I thought that was a real important element that was sort of missed before. And then, so please continue to contact Brenda or myself as you have names and contact information, because we have 40 people right now. And then the other thing was Brenda and Chris Kohler and I met on Zoom this week and talked about updating the PNWMG .org website to update the application and all the other information. And so that's in the works. The application will be posted on the website this month. I mean, we're moving. But applications are due November 30th. And so because classes start January 20th, we wanted to have a month and a half for background checks and everything else. Another change that will be is January 20th, we'll combine the orientation and beginning instruction. So in the afternoon, after orientation in the morning, we're going to have introduction to Northwest and coastal gardening and ways to evaluate resources for gardening information. We thought that was really important so that trainees know when they're out looking on the web what are good resources to look at for information. And then basically, Brenda's going to be the mentor coordinator this year. She stepped up to the plate. And so we're going to start looking for master gardeners who are willing to attend 1 or 2 classes as mentors in one of the 4 locations during training. Because we will have mentors at each one of the 4 locations. And then individual facilitators will start asking members who would be willing to work with them for their class topic. And then more information is coming. It's pretty exciting the way we're going.
So lots of changes, right? But obviously you're making those changes to accommodate the fact that we are spread over such a massive geography here.
Yeah, and again, WSU is really pushing to have training be equitable, available, and inclusive. And the best way to do that is to have classes where people live so that they can attend.
And it sounds like the training being monthly is going to reduce. It's you're pacing it out, the training, so it's
Right.
not as compacted and as schedule intensive, I guess, as the every
Correct.
other week schedule. Yeah.
We have a lot. We had more than we've ever had before trainees who worked in 2022, and it was one of the feedback we got was it was really hard to do all of that work in 4 months or so.
Yeah.
So we're going to try monthly, which is something that other counties do, and see how that works.
Comments or questions for Alina or Brenda regarding training coming up in 2024? Okay, so it sounds like there's information to be read in the e-news, right? You know, and and then new data coming.
Right.
Okay. I also want to take this opportunity at Karen and Aaron, who are online, at again pitching that coming up in September of this year is the conference, the education conference. It's in Tacoma this year, and it is face to face. So there really is this is a great opportunity to pick up these continuing education hours, right? You know, and it is a great opportunity to socialize with the entire community. And my understanding is that there's what is it, next year it's virtual, and the year after that there's no conference. What's the schedule, Aaron and Karen?
Go ahead, Aaron.
Oh, I was gonna say, yes, next year will be virtual. So the 5-year plan is to alternate in-person and virtual, and the in-person will alternate between West and East Side. So the next in-person conference, which would be 2025, will be in east of the Cascades. And I think right now they're looking at possibly Yakima and
Wenatchee also
Wenatchee. Thank you. That was what
made a bid. They'd like to do it. So
yeah.
not chosen yet though.
But a great opportunity then coming up this September, right? You know, to get those continuing education courses in a class, the accessibility to us is far easier, right? Just up in Tacoma.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question? When I attended the meetings, the state meetings, I had heard them say they would do hybrid if it's in person. Is that still the plan or not?
Not at this time. It's just too expensive.
So this year they won't, but even in the future they might, I heard? Like
They
in 3
might,
years?
depending if the costs come down, because we, you know, the technology is always improving. But basically the cost of putting on a hybrid is essentially putting on 2 conferences. So it's a possibility in the future, but it won't be for 2024, most likely.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
And registration does close for 2023 on September 15th.
Okay, so it is important that we got a little bit over a month now to think about making that commitment, right? You know, but this can't be a last minute thing. You know, we got to get that decision has to be made by middle of September. Okay. So very good. So again, we've always had good representation from our foundation at the state conference. So let's continue that coming up this year. And another note on the state program is that one of the things that the state foundation the Master Gardener State Foundation is doing is actually seeking to endow a chair at WSU. So at a professorship at WSU Extension that would be if you will, funded by the Master Gardeners. And it again, Karen, any comments in terms of this is that we're really trying to promote giving so that we can take all of our cash and give it to the state program to help endow this chair.
Yeah, having an endowed professor will basically guarantee the existence of the Master Gardener program and a Master Gardener program statewide coordinator forever. It's because and to have a professor that it can go to bat for us at a higher level, conduct research, and represent the program on the state and national and even the international level. So it's a lot of, there are a lot of benefits to having an endowed chair position representing the Master Gardeners.
So this is indeed an appeal that to continue to donate to this. There's a website and a particular, you can see this mastergardener.wsu.edu/how-to-donate, as a vehicle to make that happen. And so I know this is something that that from the state standpoint is very significant. And as Aaron points out, having a seat at the table, right? Having a professor who's totally dedicated to the Master Gardener program is not insignificant relative to these challenging times for higher ed. Okay. Hey, with that, Val, I want to turn this over to you and to share the slides that you've shared relative to the gazebo. This is a big deal for those of you who've seen it, and this slideshow in terms of before and after is pretty significant in terms of showing how all this thing came to be.
Thank you, Kelly. I just want to express my gratitude once again to the foundation for helping us financially do this. You can see what a mess. And this is kind of how it's been looking, although we've had these 2 old raised beds always produced a lot of stuff. But the first thing that happened was we moved the compost bins from where they were kind of in the middle of that area. And we did that as a teaching technique for the fair, because Leroy comes in and does a compost thing all 4 days, or all 3 days of the fair, 4 days. So we moved those over in front of the shed which gave us the space for the gazebo. And of course, we took down, Cindy and I personally broke down these beds, and that's where the new raised beds were located. And Cindy, she says we in this description. Cindy did this drainage ditch, and she wanted to do it to prove to herself she could. It works like crazy good. And one of her favorite cats uses it as a walkway. So it all worked out positively. But this area has been notoriously wet, draining down from the steep bank where the native plant garden is. And it was always soppy wet all winter long. And this drainage is just working very well. This is Justin Small and his crew, and they're a bunch of fabulous young men. And I had them dig the ditch for my rain garden, and they came in and just did more leveling. These are the sonotubes that you see on the slide on the right, that were buried in the ground, I believe 3 to 4 feet. They're 2 feet in diameter, and they're filled with cement. And that's what the legs, they constructed the legs of the gazebo and bolted those in after we got the roof, after Scott and the A team got the roof on the gazebo. But they, yeah, and the cool thing, the decision they made, because they knew this area was very moisture prone, they put gravel, they pounded in gravel as a base. You can see, yeah, as a base to the gazebo. So that is a pervious surface that water will also drain through. So I think it's just going to be a fabulously stable, consistent area now. And you can see all the, yeah, and these are the pavers that they Justin had as from a previous job and donated those to this project. And it really makes, it's really stabilized the walkway between the two areas. And now wheelchairs can get up there pretty easily. And this is our A team, Scott Clark and Holly Siebert and her husband, John, who also, by the way, hauled my raised beds in 2 trips from my house about a mile and a half away from the garden into the garden. And they did, Holly is a taskmaster, I'll tell you what, and there must have been 1,000 gazillion pieces of screws and bolts and crossbars, and she had them all organized and kept those guys busy. So it was just beautiful to watch them, because they didn't, they were pretty quiet most of the time, but they just worked until the thing was done. So, and here it is almost done. That was the last piece. Holly looks like she's a little dismayed there. She was a little stressed, but she kept the 2 guys moving quite nicely. So that's it, and these are my raised beds. I've got just really a lot of positive feedback about them, and I'm very proud of that project. So, and I just think the whole the gazebo and the raised beds together are a pretty stunning presentation. And now they're filled with squash plants, all of which have really nice sized fruit on them. So, and Cindy and I hauled horse bedding over and anything else we could find to fill these beds in. And then Scott donated a couple truckloads of composted horse manure that he mixed with his native soil. And that's what we finished these with. So we had no extra cost for the contents of the beds. And I think it's going to be a pretty rich mix by the looks of the squash growing in them. So we're just so elated about this, and people at the fair noticed it right away. And of course it was done for the garden tour, and then what we discussed at one of our geographical meetings was as just a kind of the word, I'm losing the word now, but we would really like for all of you in our entire population of foundation members to come and spend some time here. I mean, it's so awesome. So thank you for the opportunity to show these. And Cindy created this PowerPoint or PDF file, as it were. So we're really grateful that she does such good work, and she kept everybody on, on schedule here. So what a group effort.
Well, indeed it was, and indeed it clearly, just the pictures I think indicate that there's a lot of value to having professionals right from the get-go, right?
Yeah.
Do some of the heavy lifting to make sure that, in the case of the next earthquake or the next tsunami, this is going to be standing, right? Whereas every other building might fall apart. And then, of course, the finished result is right there. You have an opportunity, regardless of weather, right? Regardless of sun and heat and so forth, is that rain, to actually to do work in this garden with groups, right?
Yeah. And yeah, so we're planning some things. We've got some winter workshops coming up, one of which will be held up here, our seed saving event, October 29th, for our other educational delivery committee. And it's available. So yeah, let me know if you're interested in having, if any of you are interested in having any sort of a meeting here. So thank you. Thank you.
Bravo. Any comments from anyone regarding the gazebo? I mean, it really was, this is a major effort, right, to put forward to, and it's just that this is obviously, it's going to be, it'll last long after we're gone.
Indeed.
Okay. So a couple of things I wanted to remind us, everybody, of that, of the 8, foci that WSU Extension has, for this year. And oh, Sharon, I didn't mean to cut you off there. I see your hand up.
Actually, I was trying to get the thumbs up for the gazebo. That's what I was trying to do. Because it's marvelous. It really, truly is.
Or the applause.
Thank you.
Yeah. So again, congratulations for everyone here. Well, again, these are our focus, of course, and it goes back again to the things we talked about in the garden tour, the things that we do in the garden, in all of our gardens, in all of our clinics, and all of our outreach, right? These are the focus that we're all dealing with here, and indeed it's quite a significant work. And then a key part of all that then is indeed how to make sure that when we are when we're out engaging with the public and out working on these focuses, that we know how to focus and how to take a picture that we can share with others here. And so Eva is here with us today, and she's studied photography, right? So this is someone who's bona fide, it's more than just looking on YouTube, right? She's actually worked at this, right? And in fact, if any of you know Eva, she's actually taken trips across the country and even internationally to actually go birding and take pictures with that camera. So that this is not simply an idle activity for her. This is a bona fide professional amongst us. So as you can see from her email here, through Eva's lens, you have an opportunity to actually consult here with an expert. But Eva, I want to turn it over to you, and I've given you screen share privileges. So,
Okay,
take at it.
Let's give it a shot. Screen share. There we go. Okay. Can everybody see my screen and see that past flower? Okay.
Thumbs up.
Great, great. Okay, I'm not going to put it in slideshow mode because I like to be able to see over here where I'm going next, so I don't end up rambling for too long, which I have a tendency to do sometimes. So at any rate, today I am going to discuss photographing plants and insects with your phone or your camera for identification and documentation purposes, photographing landscapes and bigger gardens, photographing events and people, and then some artistic photography. I'm keeping this to about a half an hour, so we'll try to stay on schedule. So when we're photographing plants and insects for identification and documentation, I think probably the thing that we get the most frustrated with when we're looking at other people's photos is that they're not clear and they're not sharp. And I'm surprised at the amount of people who don't know, and I didn't know this on a phone, how simple it is to really focus in on that part of the plant or insect that you want. On an iPhone, you're just going to hold your phone over that flower and tap the screen exactly where you want that focal point to be. In camera, most of the time you'll have little squares or little X's that show where your focal point is, and you're just going to want to make sure that that's right over that flower or right over that bug that you want to be in focus. I like to shoot from eye level if at all possible. Things just look so much different when you're down at eye level than shooting from above, as most of us do, especially as we get older, and it's harder to get down on eye level. I do not look pretty when I'm trying to get back up again. But you can see if you just get one shot of, particularly we're looking at that mushroom from the top, we would just see that lovely red polka dotted top, and we would know what it was, but it's so much nicer if you can get down to eye level, and then we can see that veil and we can see a little bit of those gills there. And I just think they're prettier from eye level. I love that I can see the little face on this garden spider, and that I can see the stems on those mushrooms. So that's a good place to start. If you only get one quick shot of a plant, try to get down a little bit and get on eye level. Then we want to go ahead and take photos from a variety of angles, particularly if you're wanting to identify that plant or show somebody what's wrong with that plant. These will be great tips to give people who are going to want to bring pictures of plants in to plant clinics for us to identify diseases. So you'll see in this one here on the far left, it's just very busy. You can't tell the green foliage of this plant from the plants behind it because it's in a garden. What I like to do is I just take a piece of white foam core. The additional pictures, nothing was picked, that's still all on the plant, nothing was removed. I just stuck a piece of white foam core behind the feature of the plant that I was wanting to show. On leaves, you know, I like to do the front and the back. Sometimes you might have little aphids or something on there that give a clue. I did not take a picture of a tree, and I'm sort of kicking myself, but the same with the tree. You're going to want to get, you know, stand back and get a nice shot. You're going to want to get a shot of the bark. You're going to get a shot of the leaves, any fungus or any growths. So you just want to take from a variety of angles. And I really like to use that white mat board for separation if at all possible. To avoid camera shake, I'm really lazy about carrying around a tripod. So I find that I rest my phone or my camera on my backpack, on a fence, or when I'm on the ground, I'm usually making that triangle out of my arms. And it's surprising how much more stable your photo will be. I like to include a measurement device if you can in the photo. I do this, I walk the beach and do bird surveys looking for dead birds, and they sort of taught me how important it was to have something in there to sort of show scale. In particular, I like the photo here with the coin because you can see how tiny the leaves are on that little plant. So
Additional violent sexual assaults. And they say he lived in 10 states over the last decade.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch all that.
That's okay, Eva. It was just
Okay.
just some background noise.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, fair enough. Okay. If you are able to select settings, and more now you're able to do that even on your phone, I try not to handhold anything slower than 1/100th of a second. In fact, I usually don't handhold anything slower than 1/200th of a second. And if you can select your f-stop, which I'm going to show you in the next slide, F8 is usually going to get most of your single planter insect in focus. So on an iPhone here, this is an iPhone X. If you put it in portrait mode, you can go up then here on the right here and you can select f-stop. Then you'll get this slider down below. If you select an f-stop of f2.8, you're going to get a very narrow range of focus. You'll get maybe that ladybug in focus, but the plant and everything else will have that soft blur, which is really beautiful if you're trying to do something artistic. But if you want that whole leaf and the ladybug in focus, you're going to want to go to an f8 or a higher number even than that. And that's going to have everything in focus. Now, if you're working with a camera, sometimes you'll just have macro mode on your camera that you can just dial over. So that's often simple enough as well. We're going to jump in here to landscapes and gardens. As I was talking f-stops here, you might want to set your camera to landscape mode or your phone. Some phones allow you to do that. If you're allowed to choose an f-stop number, you might want to go up to an f14 or an f16. You'll notice in this photo here, the foxgloves at the front of the photo are in focus, as well as the tower in the back of the focus. I probably shot this at an f16, but you would get the same effect if you went to landscape mode. And that way you're going to get the whole scene in focus. Another important thing is to just have your photo level. This is a photo when I worked for County Extension and Youth and Family Services and Rapid. I had to go back and take photos once a week of the gardens we were working in and send them to the board. And what a difference it makes just that your photo is straight. And one way to look at that is I look at my horizon line, that it's going straight across the scene. Or I might look at my fence lines here, particularly on a wide photo like this. I'm going to want to look in the center and make sure my fence post is upright. Over at the edges, you see you start getting a little distortion and they look tipped out. So I always look in the center for that. And though this is nothing special, it was just to, show the board what was going on in our garden. It's nice to send them a decent photo. Again, here, same thing, just a shot I was taken at one of our school gardens to send into the board, but it just makes a difference if things are upright and the photo looks level. When you're shooting in gardens or when you're shooting a beautiful garden landscape type scene, it's really nice to start thinking about using the rule of thirds, which now it's a grid that you can pretty much pull up on your phone or on your camera, so it's always there. But it's an art principle. Whereas, for example, I usually when I shoot a landscape, I like to have either 1/3 or 2/3 of the scene as sky and the rest is ground. I like to put important elements on this line of thirds here. You'll see that castle is there. Over here, this funny little scarecrow is almost on that line of third. I didn't have a grid up. Once you start doing this, you're going to find that you just do it naturally, that you find that you'll put your important elements not quite centered, but over, more on this line of thirds. So I think if you start thinking that way, your composition will just improve and it'll become really natural for you to do that. Here again, in this garden, this is my friend here. I put her on the line of third. Again, my sky takes up about 1/3. My plants in the foreground here are on a line of third. Another thing to be watching for when you're taking photos in gardens is to create a sense of depth. And the way to do that is to include some foreground, some middle ground, and some background. Let's go back here. You really notice it here in this castle scene. I've got foreground, middle ground, and background, and it really creates a sense of depth in that photo. So, gosh, when my husband's out with me and there's sort of a flat scene, I'm always making him go stand and look in the scene so I have something in the foreground. So we're going to jump in here into photographing people and events. I'm a stickler about getting photographic permission, especially if you're working with youth. Most of the youth that I worked with in these programs had restraining orders. Many of them did. So even the law pretty much says that if you're at a public event, you can take people's photos. But if there's kids around, it's really easy to just walk over and say, do you mind if your child's in my photo that I'm taking for this event? Because you'd be surprised at the number of kids who have restraining orders. F8 and line them up straight. That's an old photography rule. If you're taking a photograph of a group of people, F8, and if they're all on the same plane of field, these guys here all lined up together, they're all going to be in focus. You'll notice the background is a little blurred, but for a portrait, I'm just wanting these beautiful faces in focus. If you're taking a close-up shot, make sure that your little focal point that we talked about is over the eye. Here, I don't mind that the green beans are out of focus. It's this sweet little girl who was picking them that I wanted in focus. She tells the story there. I love at events to take candid shots. They always end up being my very, very favorite photos. Over here on the left, we were doing a bug hunt in one of our children's gardens, and these two little guys had just spotted a dragonfly, and you can just see that, you know, the anticipation as they're reaching out to see if they can catch it. You'll notice here, just by default, they're on that line of thirds. It's just become habit for me. Over in the next photo, this was a gentleman who used to come and cook with our youth. He was fabulous. He'd cook the foods that we picked in the garden. And again, here, he's on that line of thirds. It's just become habit for me. Here is at the Harvest Festival at our Cranberry Museum. And this turned out to be a really nice photo. We've used it in a lot of event brochures and stuff because it shows, you know, it shows everything that's going on. The guy is working, the folks over here watching, that it's a family event. We've got kids there that you can go get right up where the action is. So it sort of tells the whole story of what happens at one of our harvest festivals. Here, another event, just a candid shot. These folks walking through our children's garden, looking around. Yeah, it's just so much more interesting than that garden would be without some people walking through it. I'm gonna talk to you just a little bit. We grow all these beautiful plants. We might as well take some beautiful pictures of them. So I'm gonna talk just a little bit about the art of plant photography. This photograph here on the left was probably shot at an f2.8. That's what my lens likes to do. But now, as I mentioned, you can do this with your phone. You'll notice just this first blossom is really sharp and the rest of it has that beautiful soft blur that I'm crazy about. And then over here, these leaves were probably shot at an f14. That's one of my go-to f-stops. And you'll notice that just more, even some of these leaves down on the bottom of the pond are much sharper. Shoot from different angles, have that childlike wonder and look up a little bit. Watch your backgrounds. This picture over here of the flax, you know, I was just my body was just a hair to the left, and I had this foreground flax right on top of this background, and it was just too busy. All it took was me just leaning a little bit, and then I had more of that green behind it because I wanted those blue flowers in it. I just didn't want this right on top. It was too much. So just be aware of your background. These little mushrooms here, I loved that they sort of were blanketing the forest floor. So I wanted those in the background. And you'll notice here, this 4-1 is right there on that rule of thirds. And so, yeah, pay attention to your background. Here I had an ugly background. The soil and dirt was not very pretty. So this I ended up taking into Photoshop and just darkening down that background so that we're just seeing those pretty flowers. They make artsy lenses now, both for your cameras and for your iPhones. You can buy a special macro lens to put on your smartphone, not just iPhones, but any smartphone. This lens that I used here is called a Lens Baby Velvet, and it really replicates a look that I used to get when I shot film that I've not been able to replicate in Photoshop or anywhere else. So this funny little lens that I bought really replicates some of the old school film stuff I used to do. Don't be afraid to pick your plants if you've grown them and bring them inside. All winter long when I lived in South Dakota, I would go buy flowers and shoot them, you know, on my tabletop just with window light. So don't be afraid to do that. This nice, beautiful dark background, for me, I just use a piece of velvet, black velvet that I lay behind because it absorbs light. And so you don't get any reflection. You get this really nice background. But yeah, I have a lot of fun in the winter just shooting tabletop with window light. Don't be afraid to get on your belly. I've had more than one person stop me in the forest thinking I was injured. But golly, we have so much fabulous fungus on our forest floors here. I'm still just gaga for all the mushrooms and such. So yeah, don't be afraid to get your belly dirty. These last pictures, I'm just going to review a few things and cut you guys loose, but here we go. So again, get in close, make sure your focal point is over what you want focused, get down to eye level. This little guy over here, he would not be nearly so cute if I shot him from above. We want to see his darling little face. And again, here I probably shot this at an f2.8 because only his little face is in focus. The rest is blurry. Here I was probably up at an f14 because everything's in focus on this side. Watch your background. This dahlia, I purposely put on this piece of wood because I loved the yin and yang of the very soft petals against the hardwood. And here I just spotted these beautiful leaves over that bit of mossy green pond, and just, you know, the photo just jumped out at me. So watch your backgrounds. Again, here, just another story. I know everybody hates them, but I'm still in love with the slugs. Give me another year and I'll be with y'all and not liking them so much. But yeah, wouldn't be the same shot if I hadn't laid down on my belly in the grass and waited for this guy to uncurl and start chewing again. But oh my gosh, look at that beautiful orange foot. I'm just so amazed by their anatomy. Again, here, don't be afraid to bring things inside and take them tabletop. Here I put a back, you know, just another white piece of cardstock behind those cosmos there that I brought in. Don't be afraid to get artsy. This was taken with that artsy lens. This one was just taken at a f1.8, and I had stuff go blurry in the foreground and in the background. This actually is one of my favorite photos. I'm getting my daughter to write me a poem that I'm going to put right there. If you want to emphasize texture, get rid of your color. And the texture will just jump out at you if you convert to black and white and get rid of some color. I don't do it often because part of what we love about flowers is all those beautiful colors, but every once in a while, I'll play with converting to black and white and find that I just really love it. Having said that, color is important as well. And step in close. You know, whenever I think I'm close enough, if I take another step in closer, I like the photo even better. But gosh, notice, show off some of those differences. I love the variant in color of these blueberries, the one that's ripe and the others that aren't. It's just gorgeous colors. Again, here, even with macro photography, you know, I've got foreground here, middle ground, and background. It gives this photo a sense of depth. But obviously my focal point was over this guy here. So, and again, here he's on that line of thirds. It just has become second nature. So, don't be afraid to, yeah, include a little foreground and background, even in a tight shot. Last photo here. And if your conditions aren't perfect, take the shot anyway. I was trying to get out to this water lily and the fly landed on it and I couldn't quite see him like I wanted, but you know, I love the fly. And over here, these hummingbird moths, they move so fast. You know, I've got a very busy background. I didn't get his little face, but I had, you know, seconds to get that shot. And I was really happy I did because I haven't seen those too often. Lastly, here are some websites. Mike Moats is sort of the big king of macro photography right now. tinylandscapes.com. I recommend just going so you can ooh and ah over his stuff, although I think he has some free tutorials. He also does a paid workshop that I've attended. He's really fabulous. He's sort of, yeah, he's sort of the guru right now of macro photography. Charles Dana is another person to go look at their photography. He was sort of my mentor. I bought my first macro lens from him and he does really beautiful work. And the last is my my website. I am not in the same league as those top two, but you're welcome to take a look at some of what I've done as well. And that is all I've got for you.
Eva, this is phenomenal. Questions, comments. So I guess my first question I wanted to say is that, so how many of these shots we're looking at, were you actually taking pictures with the camera versus the cell phone?
I would say probably 90% of those are camera.
Yeah.
I still lug around my camera, though I wonder why I do, because people are getting such fabulous photos with their cell phones anymore that I one of these days I may just give up the big camera.
And any particular, what kind of camera are you shooting with then? Camera and lens typically?
Yeah, I shoot with a Canon 90D and I shoot most of my macro work with 100mm macro.
Comments, questions for Eva? This is tremendous education and tremendous the tips. I like how the tips are so simple, really, to think about and to keep in mind.
Yeah, Kelly, if I could, this is Jude. This is really marvelous, Eva. I'm so glad that you showed us all these pictures. They're really great. And I have a couple of questions for you too. When you were showing the pictures of the children, which happens to us a lot, that we want to take pictures of children, but how do you document getting their permission? For instance,
Sure.
if you were to publish them, how do you do that?
Yeah, you know, of course, I was with Youth and Family Services, so we just had stacks of forms that parents could sign. More often than not, if you're at a public venue, you know, it's not required, but I just think that it's a nice thing to walk over and say, I'm going to take some pictures of this group event. Do you mind if your child is in it? And if they don't want their child in it, they'll usually, you know, walk them out of the scene.
But if you then publish it in something and the parent says, why did you do that? And
Right.
sues you, what's
Yep,
your
you would be
recourse?
best. Yep, absolutely. I hear
No,
what you're saying.
okay,
And
so either a signed form.
yeah. I don't know if WSU might have something like that available. I don't know.
Alina, Brenda, you want to comment on that?
I was going to say, I think we do.
Okay.
I know that we all as Master Gardeners sign a photo release form when we join, and I would think that same form could be used for other situations as well.
Sure.
Yes, well, could that be made available to us in some way?
It's on the website, but
Is it? Okay, under what?
PNWMG volunteer website.
Alina, you also had your hand up. Was it related to this comment or you had another question?
I just wanted to say that every time I see pictures like that, it makes me realize the detail that you can find when you take a picture and then go back later on and look at it. And things that your eye missed at the time, you go back and you go, oh my gosh, I didn't realize this. So I think it's a really valuable tool that we can use either as for personal or for master gardener use.
Val, you have your hand up. Val, you have your hand up. Well, you don't have your hand up any longer. Jude, you have your hand up again.
I do. I have a whole list here. On slide 21, I'm asking you about identity of a plant.
Okay, let's see if I can help you. That one?
Yeah, looks like a bleeding heart on the
It
left.
is indeed.
But where did you
Yeah.
find a color like that?
It was, you know, it was back in the forest and it was sort of rainy and a little dark. And I think it just sort of came out that way, you know, without a lot of light on it.
So you didn't touch that. That's not been
I
touched up
didn't.
in Photoshop.
You know, sometimes I'll up saturation a little bit, but I didn't adjust the color on it.
Well, it's very, very beautiful, and I wish I had
Oh.
seen it just like that.
Yeah.
But if I could say one more thing,
Uh-huh.
don't stop loving the slugs. They are as graceful as ballerinas.
Yes. Yes, yes.
And of course, the native slugs, you know, serve a huge purpose. So, you know, you got to love those. Got to love those even more. Other questions, other comments for Eva? This is incredibly valuable, Eva. So I'm thrilled that we're able to have this recorded, right, and available for viewing later. So think, you know, the simple instructions you gave us regarding f-stop, the simple comments regarding rule of thirds, and the thoughtfulness about backgrounds and so forth is very, very helpful.
Good. Good, good.
Question.
Sure.
Can you
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Please, yeah, go ahead.
I just purchased my first DSL ever, and I'm an old person. I purchased it last September. So I just have the kit lens with it. What lens would you recommend for doing landscape photography? I know it depends on what type of landscape, but would you recommend having a telephoto lens to get some of these images, or is a macro lens better for the really close-up things?
You know, you would do fine with the walk around lens, and most of those kit lenses, you know, what I have on my camera most of the time is a 15 to 85, so it goes quite wide and zooms up to 85, and it takes just fine pictures. The only thing you're going to find with a macro lens is that you're going to get that beautiful black background blur that you might not get quite as much with another lens, but gosh, yeah, you'll do fine with what you have. But if you're wanting to take landscapes, try to get something that has something sort of on the wide lower end. 15 is quite wide. It does really nice for landscapes.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And then you would shift to say your 100, right? When you want to zero in.
Yes, indeed. As far as a macro lens goes, they make macro lens anywhere from 50 to 100 usually. I like the 100 because I like to photograph insects, bees and butterflies, and it allows me to stay back from them a couple yards and still get that tight shot. So if you like to photograph insects, I recommend the longer macro.
Other questions, other comments? We don't often have this opportunity to have a photography expert in amongst our midst here.
I just want to say thanks. I take a lot of pictures in my garden, and I'm going to go out there right now and start trying to do some of these things.
Oh, yeah. Great.
I'm impressed by, I had no idea these latest model cameras. I mean, you obviously have a very late model iPhone, but the fact that the f-stop controls, right, are available now on these smartphones.
It's amazing.
And so at Lori Biddle, this is for you. There's another reason to upgrade your phone.
I figured that was coming. It's marvelous. I love this.
Other comments for Eva. And of course, Eva's available on email and her cell phone here. So it just, it really is a blessing to have such a knowledgeable resource amongst us, right? So, so there's, as Tony Gwynn would say if she were here, channeling Tony's, there's no excuse now for us not taking excellent photos to have to share, right, with all of us. Eva, any final comments? Any other final thoughts?
No, just get out there and shoot. You know, when I get out and shoot, I might go out in an afternoon in the garden and shoot 500 photos and keep 3. So, you know, just it's cheap to shoot now. We don't have film to develop. So just get out there and shoot, and you'll always come home with a few that you love. And print them occasionally, hang them on your wall. We tend to not do that anymore, and it's so much fun. Print them and stick them in an envelope when you mail a letter to somebody, and they'll have a pretty picture of a flower.
I have one more question. The lighting for, like, they always say, don't go out and take pictures in the outdoors on a sunny day. Is it better on a cloudy day or early?
Yeah, a cloudy day is like a great big light box, you know, it's like putting a screen over your bright light. So that really is nice. But I sort of like the high contrast sometimes of you know, the sun. So you just have to be careful. Your camera will usually show you it. You might get a white blinky if you're blowing out some areas. In other words, there's too much light in the scene. Obviously shooting, you know, white lilies isn't going to work so good in the bright sun, but anything with color in it, gosh, I love to shoot in bright sunlight.
Okay, thanks.
Eva, thank you so very much for
Oh, you
sharing
bet.
with us here
It's
today.
very fun.
Okay, so a reminder for everyone, right, is that you know, Eva's email is up on the screen here, and of course her contact information is available in the roster. Tonight at 6 p.m. board meeting for the foundation. Everyone is welcome to join. So you know, check the e-news for the URL for that, and everyone's very welcome to join us here at 6 p.m. tonight. Any other comments for the good of the order? Any other comments for the good of the order here tonight? Well, everyone get off to the day, do good things, and let's go take some pictures. Okay. Thanks, everyone. We'll see y'all.